The Jazz Age, they called the years between the two wars, and wildest and weirdest of all was the Charleston.
Jazz is arguably the most important genre of music to have ever existed in modern history, breaking down walls of racism and completely influencing all music that came after it. Despite the fact that jazz isn't what it used to be back in the early 20th century, all popular music can be traced back to jazz roots. Jazz is the epitome of what American music is, and without it, the world would be so much different. From life after the Civil War to World War II, jazz was a huge part of culture and still is today. Jazz as a genre has a long history dating back to the end of the Civil War, where African Americans would play instruments previously used in the Civil War to play their own music. In New Orleans, many black musicians incorporated swing elements and structure from blues previously sung by slaves in the field, and also ragtime elements found in clubs in segregated communities. This led to jazz bands being created who would play their music in small clubs as the music gained popularity. Unfortunately, white people looked down upon the music in clubs as low class. During the Great War, many African Americans had to fight, and they took their music with them to spread to Europe. James Reese Europe was a band director who had his band of black soldiers play jazz music in Paris outside of hospitals and also inside of small villages, where locals loved the music. After the war, jazz saw itself in a new golden era. Jazz would slowly find itself in the hands of the white population at the time, as jazz bands would find themselves playing in Mississippi riverboats where white patrons would dance to the music and as they found it exotic and irresistible. These bands would eventually end up playing in bigger venues like all-white jazz clubs, even though they were black themselves. These jazz clubs would slowly start appearing around Canada too. White jazz bands would also start becoming more popular as jazz became a popular phenomenon in white culture. In jazz's golden era, there were many musicians like Louis Armstrong who made a huge impact on jazz and culture at the time. Despite the gloom of the Great Depression plaguing the people of the 30s, jazz was still going strong in popular culture. At this point, jazz could be seen as less of a dance music and instead more of a music to be listened to and enjoyed like European classical music. Jazz bands would also become much bigger and more racially diverse as segregation laws relaxed, like Duke Ellington's band. In this time, jazz became more mainstream and a music to be listened to by everyone. After the 30s, jazz would diverge and eventually influence the creation of new genres of music like modern blues, which would in turn influence more popular styles of music today. Jazz was and still is an important part of African American and Western culture. Jazz was a rebellious tool that was used to bring black and white people closer together and was instrumental to Canada becoming a place of equality.